Alpine Liquid Fertilizers is your full season crop fertility specialist from start to finish. Visit alpinepfl.com for more.
Hi, I'm Werner Tobin. Welcome to Real Agriculture. Today I'm at the Southwest Agricultural Conference and I'm joined by Greg Peterson, Machinery Pete. He's traveled from Minnesota over here to Ridgetown, Ontario to do a keynote presentation. Sir, thank you for stopping by.
Oh man, always a treat to come back to Ontario, and boy, first time at the conference here, impressive. Yeah. And the history of it and the learning, bringing all the folks together and the video element online, again, hats off to what they've done here.
Yeah, so, and then you like Canada. You always we had some great jokes and we had some great fun.
Canadians, I'm a Minnesota boy, so your audience up here, I always loved dealing with them. And I always thought it's kind of odd, but social media I've been doing now for 15 years, going back to 2009, and it always seemed to me, whether it was Facebook or then Twitter and then Instagram, YouTube, that our Canadian audience, you guys are just ahead of it up here. You know, and you guys are a great example of that. You've been ahead of on the journalistic side, just smart and inquisitive. And so, we've of course been covering auctions in Canada for 30 years, so always fun to come back up north.
And 35 years for you, right, if I'm correct?
November 1989, I got my start burn. I was 23 years old. I didn't know much, but my father was a third-gen dealer, and he just told me these auction prices, it's really good data. And of course, the term big data was, 20 plus years from being a thing. So, and the internet wasn't even a thing. So I just started compiling the auction prices and just kind of tried to lean into it. Yeah. And I didn't know where it was going to go, but it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, it's got you all the way to Ridgetown, Ontario today.
There you go.
Hey, let's talk about data and in the sense of used farm equipment sales and trends that you talked about today. Want to talk about what's happening today. Things have in this time period gotten soft. We've had some hot years, but take us back. You started your conversation, looking at 2013, 14, and 15, and a little bit of a mirror image there.
Yeah, that period of mid-13 through end of 15, that was the biggest drop in late model used farm equipment values I've ever seen. Nothing close. And again, starting in 1989, I saw drops, after, commodity prices were up in 96, used values went up and then they crashed. But that period, basically when ethanol really took off like a rocket ship late 07, from there through early 13 was a very strong period for new sales, and used values were at an all-time high. And then what was building up, you could see what was happening was dealers were getting a big excess of large late model units, like 24-row planters, sprayers, combines, high horse tractors, and they knew the pain was coming. And then when commodity prices fell, like April of 13, it started to adjust. And so that to me has been if history is a lesson, that's the data point I'm looking back at to compare to now, which I think we're about 1 year into this current recalibration. And again, in 13 through 15, late model used fell about 18 to 25% year over year for like two plus years, and then began to just flatten out. So, I've been a little surprised this time around. A couple things. One, just the volume of very late model equipment.
There's a lot of stuff out there, right?
Dealers have been super aggressive in 23 and 24 taking this stuff out to auction. And, the prices they get, they're having some huge losses. But as interest rates started to go up last year in the U.S., paying 8% interest on your used lot full of, that's painful too. Yeah. So I think that one of the structural changes, Bern, that I've seen versus a decade ago is just with the dealers. Back then, there were way more dealers. Like if you had 5 stores, you were a decent-sized dealership. Now there's hardly any 5 stores left. They've all been gobbled up. Now you're a 30 to 80 store dealership. And these dealerships are capitalized differently. So they're able, it's no fun for them, but they're better able to withstand these losses. So that's the one big difference versus a decade ago, is year one into this downturn, we're seeing about a 150% increase in the late model stuff being sold at auction. So that's the one point for farmers. Your history, your memory, and your dad and your grandpa might tell you, okay, we can sit tight with our equipment through this down period, and just know there's always going to be this huge excess on the dealer lot. That might not be like that. It's still recalibrating. I think 25 we're going to continue to adjust, But no, it's been really fun to track.
And you talked about the difference between that period and what's happening now, and a couple of other things. Online auctions have changed this game completely.
Yeah, unbelievable, Bern. I think if I were to write kind of a book or whatever about my 35-year experience, the period in middle of March of 2020 was going to be one of the first chapters because it was unbelievable. So when the shutdown came, it was right in smack in the busiest auction season of the year, March and April. And most auction owners, I'm 59, they're like a little bit older than me throughout most of North America. So technology-wise, we'd had online bidding for 15 years, so that was that. But now all of a sudden, boom, you can't have a physical in-person auction. It has to be online. And the whole industry leaned into online only. And the fascinating thing for me was that commodity prices hadn't gone up yet. That was like October of 20. But instantly, within a week of the shutdown, auction pricing went up. And to the point I actually wrote a blog and I said, folks, this is unbelievable. There's not necessarily any reason for it, but I think what happened is that pandemic just forced us over the shark tank. Right. And so now, when you see a piece of used equipment in Tennessee that fits what you're looking for, now that barrier has just been eviscerated. And it's like you click the button and it's yours. And once that changed, in theory, it speeds up the whole used equipment, farm equipment space. If you look at the automobile sector, I always found an interesting contrast. So the automobile sector has been 10, 15 years ahead of the used farm equipment. So if they get something aged out on the lot, you take it to auction, boom, they move it, take their losses, move it, focus on selling new. Farm equipment was different. And now the whole system is faster. And so that's a good thing if you're a manufacturer. It's a good thing if you're a shareholder. It's a bit problematic if you're a farmer relying on the old peaks and valleys. You might have to speed that up a little bit, I think.
You also said the prices of new have really shaken this thing up as well.
Yeah, that's probably the number one thing is I always figured, 35 years doing this, it's like, can they go higher? Can they go higher? And of course they always did. I always used to assume like a 4% annual jump. And of course coming out of the pandemic with the labor costs, just the raw, you couldn't get the steel or the supply issues, everything got gummed up. Whether right or not or whatever, manufacturer farm equipment, the cost just skyrocketed. And once you get that high, the number one thing you don't want to do is back up. So now, in terms of just slamming off production, so you're closing plants, you're sending plants south of the border or whatever, all of that is done to hold that new price point. And the question becomes, we would always ask this, can you get a point where it's too high for a price of a tractor or a combine or a planter? I don't know that we've hit it, but I think we're starting to test it.
Hey, you spent some of your presentation talking about the auctions that you've been visiting in the last few months. A couple of thoughts on some things that you talked about. The price of loader tractors, for example.
Yeah, loader tractors, of course. That livestock sector has been much more healthy, vibrant than the grain side the past year plus. So on the auction side, we definitely see much stronger auction pricing on good used loader tractors. So whether they're on the smaller end of the scale or a little bit higher, just much stronger. So versus a higher horse tractor just for the grain side is dropping more quickly.
You're always amazed with grain carts.
Oh, grain carts, it was amazing. I was at an auction December 3rd, Bern. It was in Dexter, Minnesota. A nice little farm community about 40 miles outside of Rochester where I live. And it was a retirement sale, and everything sold really well. The tractors sold well, super clean operation, but the grain cart kind of stopped me in its tracks. It was a 22 model Brent 2596 on tracks, and it brought 170,000 US. And of course, all our auction prices, they're all free to view at machinerypete.com. We want people to look at this stuff before they buy or sell. But that's the highest by I think it was like $15,000, the highest auction price ever in a grain cart. And it did make me stop and say, let's just go back in time. Because again, the price has been rising so fast. So the highest auction price ever on a grain cart 20 years ago in 2004 was $36,000. And 10 years ago in 2014, it was $72,000. Now, of course, they've continued to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But, whether you can chalk it up to inflation, chalk it up to whatever you want. All I know is we went from 36K to 170K. And again, what drives that is the price of new.
Yeah. You talked about, again, good used equipment is going to hold its value. And you talked about the limbo bar.
Yeah, the Machinery Pete limbo bar. It's something I started writing about years ago. And it's basically, so the used equipment sector, no matter how good or bad things are, there's always a financial point, a line in the sand, a limbo bar, at which everything in good shape will still sell well. So even during bad periods like the late 90s, like 04 to 06, 13, 14, 15, and what's changed is the level of the limbo bar. So when I first started writing about it, it was about $10,000, $15,000. Anything under that back in the late 90s would still sell well. And now the limbo bar might be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. But I shared a slide of a sale in Illinois I covered, and it had a Bush Hog 1865E side boom mower, and we stood there and filmed it selling it for about $20,000. And the owner told me, Pete, I paid like $17,000 for that like a few years ago. But you could feel the interest in it. At the same time, when late model used is going like this, here's a $20,000 mower, and the competition for it is through the roof. So that's my limbo bar.
Let's talk about some categories here again. You love that 4 to 7 year old, category there.
Well, I think the 4 to 7 year old age of equipment to me is the sweet spot to get the best value as a buyer, because another limbo bar, or another line in the sand for me, is 10-year-old equipment. And once I've seen it for 35 years, but once a piece of equipment gets a tractor and combine in particular, when they're 10 years old and in good shape, that's what everybody wants. Because the price gap between a nice 10-year-old one and the new one is so big. Now the trick is the main depreciation hits in that year 3 to 7, 3 to 8. So I always thought if you can just get a nice 5-year-old one with low hours, and even if it feels like you're paying a lot, guess what? In 5 years, you're going to have a low-hour 10-year-old unit, and then it's like just moths to the flame neon light. Everybody wants it. And so whether at that point you want to trade it in or sell it privately, when you have what everyone wants, you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Let's wrap up with a look at some other tractors, some combines and stuff like that. You talked about 200 horsepower. You seen prices drop?
Yeah, that would be driven by the late model units, and again just the volume sold at auction in 24. 0 to 3-year-old units, I think, were over like 126% jump.
Yeah.
So actually, given that humongous increase in the volume of these late model units sold, I've been kind of surprised the auction prices have held as good as they have. Now again, people will see a 200 horse tractor or a late model combine sell at auction, like a combine for whatever, $420K, and they'll say, oh, that was terrible. But what they're comparing it to is the retail price of new. So what I track is the auction pricing, and we also track dealer advertised pricing, and then the gap between those 2 points. So I think combines are a year ahead, used combines. That big adjustment started in 23, a lot of them taken to auction. And the 200 horse tractors, 2024 was year 1 of that recalibration, 25 will be year 2. So, it'll be an interesting year coming up.
Interesting, you talked about supply and demand. It's in 175 horsepower. So, there's, depending on the category, there's actually some demand and
right.
A little different.
Well, you drift into that, 150 horse, loaders. I mean, again, we talked about how the auction prices have been stronger there. Livestock guys just have more money. And I mean, auction market is not science. It's, how much money do you have and how bullish are you on the future? So if you're a grain farmer pulling in that 350 horse tractor, 400 horse, those prices going down. But that 150 horse in good shape, it's like everybody has their checkbook out and prices are holding going up.
Final thoughts, looking at the ag economy, where commodity prices are and stuff like that, and obviously what the trends that you're seeing. How do we, from all your followers and the people who follow you, what do you tell them about, how to navigate 2015, 2016? Really does depend on the individual, right?
Yeah, it does. It depends on your operation, and I think the best thing you can do is, follow what you guys do and putting out information on all categories of agriculture. We zero into the equipment side of things, and hopefully the information can inform. And I think 2025, there's a lot of question marks with tariffs and such.
Yeah.
There's a lot of increased hope down in the U.S. with the election, generally in farm country, but as how it plays out is going to be interesting. But I guess what it gets back to, Bern, is that up or down or sideways, that's what I've always loved about the auction price data point, is it strips out all the emotion.
Well, you love it. It's data takes away the emotion, right?
It takes away the emotion, right. And so if if things are going down, it's just how much are they going down? Or if they're conversely, when they go up, it's how much are they up? And we hope our data can help people make good decisions either way.
Yeah. Well, Greg, great to have you on Real Agriculture. Great to see you up here in Ontario. Thanks for dropping by, and we'll follow you on all things social media, and check out your auction price guides. And
Thanks, Vern. Always fun to come up, and again, hats off to what you guys are doing and how you're doing it.
Appreciate it, sir. We'll see you soon.